Okay, hello and welcome to Bird Barrier Live training. We are here at the studio to cover sanitation, health risk, and kind of how this relates to the COVID, the pandemic going on, and some opportunities there are to expand your business. Most importantly, protect you from dangers that relate to bird droppings. A lot of people are asking questions about this in terms of your end customers that you'll be facing. They need a little more information. Now, one of the things I'll say at the top of the session here is, of course, go to birdbarrier.com and we have a whole section you can read in more detail about cleaning, about safety related to the droppings, the diseases. We're going to cover a lot of that here today, but you should read that thoroughly and copy, cut and paste any of that information. You can highlight it, copy it, and drop it in for your documentation to pass on to your customers. So use those resources to communicate to your customer. I'm going to touch a little bit on bird, how this relates to bird cleanup specifically, because I know a lot of people are in the business of bird control and bird cleanup. But I'm also going to talk to the general population out there, people that do cleaning, cleaning crews, window crews, maintenance workers, people who are in charge of their own facilities and want to learn more about the risk and the dangers and how to quantify this and then execute a plan to solve the problem. The reason that cleanup is critical in terms of bird control is not as scientific as many people might think. Now, the reason it's critical for your safety is a separate issue we're going to touch on. But the reason it's critical in terms of bird control is that it's at the essence of what bird control really is all about. Bird control is about cleanup. And this is what matters most to the customer. Not that you really get rid of birds. They certainly want you to get rid of birds from their facility, but they're very tolerant of the birds. So I want you to think about a rodent, like a rat, for example. People freak out when they see a rat, especially in a workplace, especially in a lunchroom, in a house, in an office space. They freak out, right? They'll want to get rid of that rat. And even if the droppings, little tiny droppings, I've gone into places that had rats a year ago and they still have droppings laying around. Nobody vacuumed and nobody cleaned anything up. People are very tolerant. It's the inverse of that. People are very intolerant of bird droppings, but very accepting of the bird itself. They see a bird, if a bird gets into a facility, of course, they'll call and want them out, but they aren't terrified like they are of rodents, that sort of thing. The irony of that in a health perspective is that bird droppings contain twice the disease risk that rodents do. There are about 30 known vectors in rodent droppings, yet there are over 60 involved in bird droppings. And bird droppings have this way of getting right into the vicinity of the people who become a victim of the problem a lot more directly. But the issue is droppings. The way that we solve droppings in general is we relocate birds. That's the way we generally remove the source of the droppings. We just relocate birds. We don't kill the birds, even though some birds are allowed to be killed, trapped out, and you euthanize those birds. In general, it's not what the customer wants. The customer wants the birds to just go somewhere else, be happy, no harm, and then get rid of these damn droppings that are all over all of our facility and our equipment and everything like that. The thing you have to realize about bird droppings is that they are used as a pheromone marker, and they cause the birds to mark out their territories, especially for nesting. So we see this photo example here that I had birds in the nest there. That is the result of the imprint causing the bird to reclaim their nesting spot because it wasn't cleaned properly. If you use spikes in a nesting area, you're going to have failures, but it's going to happen a lot quicker if you don't clean up first. Therefore, one of the facts of infestation when it reaches an unhealthy level is that the birds are nesting they've imprinted, and that the pressure becomes high. It's high pressure, meaning the pressure for them to reclaim, to continue living there no matter what you do. And then you start to have the exposure problem unfold over time. Now, we're going to cover the most common reason why people ask for droppings to be removed. And again, it's not as scientific as we'd like for it to be. The first reason is just the way they look. Most people are really unaware of the dangers, diseases, or risks. They hear about them. I know as a kid when I was growing up, my parents told me things like, yeah, don't touch bird droppings, they'll make you sick, and touching any kind of dropping will probably make you sick. And then, but that was the basic lesson that I had from my history. And then the other thing you get told about, well, you can't touch a bird's nest or touch the baby bird, the mother will reject the bird, which is not true. But it ties into this thing about the chemical, biological components. But at the end of the day, most people just say, man, those bird droppings look terrible. And especially underneath a nesting site, and especially under a pigeon nesting site, it can be pretty disgusting. So I go into these sites all the time. Now, the second logical reason then is, what does it cost to clean up the droppings? No one ever thinks to solve. A lot of people don't even know that there's an industry called bird control, or that they also don't know that the cleanup itself is considered hazmat. How many people didn't know that? Maybe right off the bat you learned a lesson right there. When you talk to your client, they should not be doing the cleanup themselves ever. It's hazardous material. If their employees are doing it and they're not properly trained, then the company that's making them clean up the droppings is liable. So you have to be careful with things like that. The cost of cleanup. Now we're starting to get into some practical reasons where work stoppages. There's a problem, they can't continue working for whatever reason, and it relates to birds. Now it's got their attention. Slip and fall risk, even though that sounds really outlandish, it's actually has to do with liability issues that I talked about earlier, the exposure and liability of slip and fall, like big refineries, where at night things get a little damp. There's a lot of bird droppings, and when somebody slips and falls in that setting, they can really do some financial damage in their repairs and that sort of thing. Damage to equipment like HVACs is really common. Now, until we get all the way down to number 6, do we hit the disease risk. But this one is moving up in the rankings, and that's why today we're talking about this stuff, as we're seeing this move up the ranks. By next year, it'll probably be higher up on the list. Inventory damage, secondary infestations like bird mites, or power industry called me, and they were having snakes causing outages because snakes are going up and they're going after the bird nest and the eggs and the chicks. This was in Idaho. Secondary infestation. So in other words, the problem isn't the birds directly, it's actually the snakes. But how do we get rid of the snakes? We get rid of the food that they're going after. And then customers complaining, like at a grocery store. They don't like to see walk-through bird droppings, especially when they're going to pick up food for their families, bring it home, right? And then clogged drains is the last one, where especially in our region here in California and the southwest U.S., where it doesn't rain for several months, you have a buildup of droppings, nesting material, eggs, dead pigeons. All of this washes down in one big thunderstorm, and it goes into the drains. Drains are overflowing. The contamination goes down the walls, and you get leakage in through the drop ceilings. The next thing you know, people are getting sick. So that's another one of them. But let's talk about the diseases associated with birds. Now, keep in mind, what I'm trying to do is give you a basic understanding. This isn't going to be advanced science class today. As a matter of fact, if you get this way too involved, you're going to go past the customer. It's really important to just have this basic understanding to explain to the customer. Then if they say, well, tell me more about this histoplasmosis. We had a couple people that got really sick, and then they go to the doctor, and now they're blaming it on the bird droppings. I want to know. And then in that case, we can turn them on to much more deeper involved information. The one thing that you want to keep in mind with bird droppings is they're far more dangerous when they're dry. For those of you out there who are able to type in the chat box, who can tell me why is that? Why are dry bird droppings far more dangerous than fresh, wet droppings, for example? Anybody have a guess? Anybody see our cleanup episode that we did? I think it was module number 9. Right, David Heinrichs says they become airborne. That's exactly right. Aerosol, yeah, kind of that idea, right? It gets into the air. So the best comparison of bird droppings and the recommendation on dangers with your customer is this. Treat it like asbestos. Now, asbestos is actually carcinogenic, right? That could actually lead to cancer. But in general, it takes an awful lot. But the way that it's treated in homes across America is just leave it alone. It's not going to harm anybody unless you disturb and cause the dust to become airborne. And that's the same with dry droppings. So you want to always dampen and moisten the droppings before you go into the area, or you just don't want to disturb anything when you're doing your inspection. The transmission effect usually comes from inhaling. That's the most common way. You're going to breathe it in. So make sure you're wearing your proper protection for this. Touching your hands on contaminated surfaces and then eating food or drink. This is why in the cleanup episode, we tell you don't plan on eating anytime during a break. During cleanup, don't eat. Only drink water, and do that using a straw and a container that's kept in your car, somewhere away from all the contamination. You think that you're safe and you can just, grab a quick snack. Next thing you know, you're sick, right? You've got problems. The direct contact of dead birds is another way that you can get it. So if you see dead birds, be very careful with how you handle those. In California, I'm instructed whenever I see any of the corvids, the crows or any of the ravens, if I find any dead birds, I have to turn them into the state for testing for the West Nile virus. They'll do tests. And then that county is marked as one. Now, other states out there have similar programs, so you want to look into that as well. And the reason why is if we have a very intense corvid infestation, those are protected, but you can get a permit in order to solve the problem, and you can actually kill those birds if you get a permit. And the way that West Nile transfers is from bites, usually mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are the way that most diseases are introduced to the bloodstream from creatures like birds or even bats. So the main vectors that I mentioned, now I could sit here and again make this into a big science class. You just want to know that there are 4 categories of those 60. Bacterial will get you quick. You will know immediately when you get bacteria. My wife one time, all she did was prep the kitchen. It was at her mother-in-law's house. I remember it well. She got so sick from salmonella. She was out for 3 days with that infection. That stuff is in their droppings. It gets everywhere, especially around poultry. Not just around poultry. Around poultry, there are often other pest birds that then cross-contaminate everything. I went to a site in Guatemala where there was a flower factory plant, and it was contaminated with all kinds of bird problems. Next to that plant was a chicken farm. Birds were going from the droppings of the chicken and into the flour, transferring salmonella. Very dangerous situation. Could have been a major recall until they solved the problem. Fungal, like histoplasmosis, these are all nasty things. These things don't leave you. If you get them in your lungs, and these spores incubate in your lungs, that airborne stuff, man, it's just looking for a warm, dark climate, and it spreads through, gets into your bloodstream. Like the viral, we mentioned West Nile virus, and then protozoal is like toxoplasmosis, which is even worse. These things are so hard to cure. The current one, I have somebody who had toxoplasmosis. They're in the 2nd year of recovery from it. their immune system is ravaged from it. I mean, we're talking about, COVID and how bad it is, and these diseases are all around on a regular basis. Now, they're not so common, like they're not so contagious in that same way of COVID, but it's important to understand that there are serious vectors, and this information you want to share with your customers, all right? Let's talk about personal protective equipment then. For those of you that are going to engage in bird droppings at all and get out there, you got to have the right PPE. The most important thing is that face mask, and then it has to be HEPA or higher. Now, who can tell me, for those of you who can see me out there on today's session, why does it not matter what kind of mask that I wear? That I'm not certified as you look at me right now? What is it about me that makes me not able to safely do bird cleanup work? By the way, I want to keep it that way. Anybody have a guess of what exactly? So Dan Brady says the beard. I'm not going to get a proper seal, right? I have this funny photo where a guy shaved a ring right here so that his mask could sit in there. Dennis, you're right as well, right? Dennis can wear a mask, no problem. He's clean shaven. He will be safe. No disease transfer there. Probably get a perfect air seal, right? It's really important though to have that seal and test that before. If you can breathe and get air in, especially around bird droppings, you don't want to do that. Make sure you're sealed really well. The other thing that's overlooked is the eye protection. Now, we might think we have safety glasses and maybe even better glasses with side shields that are going to protect from splashing of chemicals. But the same amount of seal must cover your eyes, and your forehead all the way through here. And it should be a really tight seal where it's fogging up kind of thing, where it's that sealed. Because these disease vectors will transfer in through your eyes and get into your bloodstream that way. So remember, from now on, make sure you're protecting your eyes properly. Gloves have to be like chemical resistant, right? Nitrile. When anything getting past the gloves. The longer they are, the better too, if you're doing a lot of cleanup. I wear the ones that go past my elbows whenever possible. Full Tyvek suit. These are really important. They cover some of them go around your shoes as well. That's really important to be able to pull this all tight. If you do this properly, you're not going to have those concerns. You take all these precautions, you're going to do great. The rubber boots are really important too. Make sure you're getting good traction though. When you're working around bird droppings, it's very slippery, and you want to make sure you get a good grip. And then as well, a pan like this so that you can rinse off the bottom. And for good measure, I'm always using bleach water. I'll spray the bottoms with bleach water to kill everything on it after I've done my job, and I put these back into my van, take them off, and go in. How are we doing so far? Any questions about what we've covered here? Any questions about how the disease gets transferred in so far with these droppings? Does this all make sense? I'm going to keep going unless I see other questions pop up into the text box here. We're going to talk about droppings now. The actual droppings. I'm sorry, I was looking for, make sure Zach is back there still. He's awfully quiet. My producer of the show today, Zach, has been very helpful on all these. But this is our third session today. We got up at 4 o'clock this morning to come here for some early bird ones. Is it necessary to have the full face mask? If I were doing cleanup work, yep, I would have full face mask. You don't want to take a chance. The thing is that your insurance waiver probably demands it. And so if you get sick from it, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And we want to make sure you're protected. So the main thing is you want to have sealed eye protection. And then, you want to have a good mask that's doing its job, sealing it up really well. So highly recommended for these. Let's look at some of the example of droppings. Now this is going to go from kind of your average site to the worst you can imagine. When we say loose and bonded, bird droppings, especially pigeon droppings, believe it or not, are like their adhesive that they use to hold their nest together. So they bond things together. It's like a glue almost, and it's pretty damn nasty. But there's often a lot of loose material as well. So when it's really bonded, it requires, for you to really soak it properly before you get into it here. But these are all different levels of droppings that you'll experience out there. All of these, when you disturb these, they just become airborne. What's that, Zach? Jackson Pollock. It does. You're right. That looks like something that you'd see at the L.A. County Museum of Art out there. You'll see heavy patterns like this too. These are rows. This is what falls on, under like duct work in a parking garage where they're constantly nesting on top. Or at the top of a support pole, there will be an I-beam that intersects. On either side, the bird droppings are falling. So we see all these patterns and the levels of dropping, and then you get to these areas here. This is a totally toxic situation. If somebody was even thinking about sitting out there and trying to eat, that would be a very bad idea. We lost one of our screens out here, Zach. I don't know if it mattered or not. No problem. HVACs are very, notable places. Birds love to nest. And why is it especially dangerous to have birds nesting under the HVAC? What is the complication of this? Can anybody chat in what I'm getting at here? Why is there even a more heightened? Well, the airborne, but what about the airborne? The fact that you've got it under an HVAC, this is the air handler unit, right? It gets into the air system and then distributes. Very good, Christina. That's exactly right. And even when we have filters and we take out the filters, just those spores, they're loose bird droppings. They get past the filter side. We put a fresh filter on. Now dropping debris is on the other side. We kick it on. There was a disease famous in the 70s called Legionnaire's disease, and it was all related to this sort of problem, where several people died. This wet mixture and all this stuff gets into the air system. So it's really critical that you clean it properly, you get rid of this problem, don't allow birds to nest there. It's an especially sensitive area. Then you start seeing really, some of the bigger birds will leave much more larger droppings, wetter droppings. They contaminate everything. And then you get into the nesting material. Don't underestimate how dangerous the nest is. I see guys carrying a nest and they got no mask, and that thing's just radiating all tiny little particles. If you ever hold it up in the sun and shake it, there's a whole ecosystem of life going on inside of those things, and none of it is good for you. All of it will give you a lot of lung problems if you breathe it in there. And then this is my favorite. This is what I call major league cleanup there. So you get a building that's had windows open on a certain floor. No one noticed because it has been used for 3 years. And the pigeons set up an entire major reproductive center, and the droppings start to stack up and measured not in inches but in feet. And I've seen areas like this. They are disturbing to visit. Yeah, some of them at least were potty trained. Good observation there, Zach. Train them to at least use that urinal. Oh man! All right, let's do a quick poll. No, this is just verbal. I'm going to do questions here that they can type in, Zach. So I don't throw you a curveball there. Has anyone here done any bird cleanup so far? And did you know, have you learned anything so far? That's what I'm curious, Did you know about the eye protection? A lot of people don't know that. How many people out there have actually done bird control cleanup? So David, yes, you've done cleanup, and do you feel comfortable with what you've been taught here so far? Dan says several. Dan, is everything we've shown so far up to your standards? Is there anything that you want to add to what I've mentioned so far? Feel free to type in questions, and observations. Otherwise, you can actually, if you have a lot to say, you can unmute yourself, and then we've got you live here in the studio. So Dan says exactly what we do. Good. Yeah, that's good to hear, because man, it's not such a big deal, except for people who are exposed on a regular process, right? Like somebody like myself, I'm around these droppings all the time. You, as a professional, if you're doing this all the time, make sure don't take any chances with it, because it's a cumulative effect on your immune system. And then the same thing you need to communicate to your customer is that these employees that sit in the warehouse and they're around bird droppings day after day after day, they're the ones that are at the highest risk of all. When you go to do cleanup, I'm going to show you some basic steps. This session isn't dedicated to cleanup. I just want to make sure that you know the basics. You're going to spray them down with water first to keep them from being airborne. Remove as much loose matter that you can. Of course, this is all after you've suited up properly with PPE. Specific cleaners are much better. When I say specific, it needs to be designed for bird droppings for a multitude of reasons, but mostly just know that there are specific bird cleaning solutions, like what we sell here at Bird Bearer. We've got 3 different cleaning solutions. My personal favorite is called Dissolve It, and it's for bird droppings. Let it soak in. Let it do its job thoroughly. The enzyme in it will go and break down the biohazards that are in that dropping, and then get rid of all of the droppings themselves. Scrape it up, rinse it off. Then after everything is cleaned completely, then you introduce a light mixture of bleach on surfaces that you're going to be installing deterrents or prevention of birds returning to those sites. If you have any current conditions like a cold, a flu, asthma, any kind of problem, you shouldn't be doing cleanup. If you have a known medical condition where your immune system is weakened, you should not be doing this type of cleanup. It'd be quite dangerous for people. They don't realize the impact, and you're letting an opportunity come in. And again, I mentioned it earlier, but technically in the state of California and most states across the country, bird droppings are classified as hazardous infections waste. Infections waste. It should be infectious. When you go to the dump, when you're taking large volumes, they classify it as that. There are ways to dispose of in different areas, but you have to double bag it. You don't just put it in a bag and tie it. You then place that bag in another bag and then tie that. And like I said earlier, don't do any eating of anything during that cleanup. Make sure that you do a good, thorough job. The cleanup, I guess Chad said, can you show the last clip? Hopefully, if this is the one you were after, I'll put this one back up for you. If that was the one that you wanted, Chad, let me know. I'll leave that up there for a minute. And of course, anybody wants to do a screen capture, or if you're on your phone and do a quick photo, do that. Feel free to keep this information. One other thing I'll mention while we're here on this point is that if you haven't joined it yet, for anyone who joins us on live webcast, they're going to get access to Bird Barrier live training on Facebook. It's a private page. You have to ask for permission to go in. Once you're in there, training modules that we've been doing for certification are available for you to watch the recorded version. After you watch the recorded versions, like this one will be there today, we'll post it in there, and people who missed the session will have it available to them. We'll do more repeated live versions in the future, but it's on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook and then look up Bird Barrier Live Training, yeah, we'll put it in the chat. We'll put a link for that so that you can just click on it. But ask permission, and then we'll let you in there. And then once you're in there, you can learn a whole lot and continue the training program. Let's talk about this, how this relates to COVID. First of all, we're not trying in any way to take advantage of the COVID situation. This is a terrible crisis. What's happened is that we've been asked about this in relation to the industry, and especially I'm getting a lot of questions about bats because they found that the genetic code seems to indicate that COVID was transferred from bats to humans, or bats to a host animal and then to humans. We don't know, right? We don't know yet. We will know. We'll know probably 100% at somewhere in the future, but probably not for a while because of the politics of the situation. But the COVID situation is, we need to clean up. And so I just got this notice from the state of Arizona. In Arizona, I was not able to go to the Arizona Pest Show this year. I was one of the invited guest speakers. I was going to speak about multisensory technology. And instead, the entire state annual show was done as a virtual show. I did a pre-recorded session. And then anyone on that, in that whole event, which is just ending in the next day or so, they had it up for 30 days. We got a notice from the governor of Arizona that they are telling people to go out and clean things, and anything that you can do to help with COVID-19, they want professionals to do it. There's no federal licensing for cleanup, so they're saying get the word out there, please help us clean. So this is a good opportunity, and it's what we need to do. Look, there's one thing to wear a mask and then wash your hands on a regular basis, but professionals like you are in a unique opportunity to help this war out on the ground and go in and actually decontaminate offices. Officially, this is the official stand right here. Now, I recommend you copy this, document this. This is, of course, available on CDC website and that sort of thing. But these are all the collective view that these leaders of safety that are all in the news now because of COVID, they warn of the dangers exposed to bird droppings because of this toll that it takes on the immune system. Now, I don't think I've heard, the immune system brought up in the news more than in the last few months because of this COVID, on how people that have weakened immune system are the most vulnerable to COVID. Same thing applies to people around bird droppings and COVID. So anyone age 60 and above or infants under the age of 2 are at increased risk to bird dropping due to the infestation. This applies to the COVID as well. They're both one and the same because it's all about your immune system and the ability to fight it off. Any comorbidity, right? Any existence of a pre-existing condition like diabetes or heart problems, these all cause our immune system to be more at risk. There are a few other bird-borne factors that come into play where diseases are spread directly by the birds themselves into the environment. Now, I mentioned West Nile virus earlier. This is a bad disease. Nobody wants to get this, and it's primarily transferred by corvids like crows and ravens, but it can be transferred by any number of birds. And then the avian flu, this has come into the news lately too. They predicted that there will be future pandemics, and this is before COVID, that there will be transfer usually from birds because we have so much proximity to birds, especially like poultry with the avian flu. Now, all it takes is the right mutation for it to find its way into a pandemic. For now, the avian flu isn't a risk. It's not at near the level of this. But these are the kind of things that all tie in to bird-related diseases. Now, as far as your supplies for PPE, another thing that we're offering here at Bird Barrier is we have supplies. Supplies have been running out. And therefore, one of the things that we've done during this whole COVID episode is because we already had supply chains established, and we are getting a lot of PPE material out to the pest control industry and people who do cleaning. And so if you need PPE supplies, we've got these available for you. We've got masks, we've got gloves, we also have the sprayers needed. Now, in addition to regular bird cleanup, which is normal power wash equipment. We want to see more people get involved if they can in using the sprayers that are used for the sanitation issue for sanitizing for things like COVID. A lot of the people out there are already doing this type of work in the pest control industry, but the supplies are so limited right now. And they seem like they're going to be limited for quite a while now. So let me ask this question at this point here. With these sprayers that we're going to talk about here to finish up this episode, how many people out there right now are offering the sanitation services that we see a lot of pest control companies? Is there anyone out there who's offering this to go into an office, spray down surfaces, especially when they have found, somebody might have contracted the virus and they come in? So David says your company, have you done any of the actual work yourself? Have you gone in and done sanitation, or is that some other techs in your company? Anyone else out there? I think David's doing. See, techs do the work. So, yeah, Guillermo is saying that they do it. RK Environmental. Okay, so this is an important thing. I don't know how it's playing out. I haven't really talked to too many people, but we have been getting other companies that are like one-off pest control professionals or cleaning companies, and they want to enter into this market. They want to be able to do a good job of it. So we also have ability to provide you with the equipment for these things, and then build your model so you can go out and do that. So it's good. Yeah, see, we've got people joining us today that are doing these type of services. So for those of you who are not offering these services, we're seeing more and more people ask, and this is a natural progression, especially from what you're already doing in terms of bird control cleanup, the safety factors, all this PPE. You can also do this type of cleanup. Now, this sprayer right here, for example, that I'm going to show you, we don't have these in yet, and we have a limited supply of these, and we're already selling these in advance before they arrive. But we have these sprayers that give the right micron dropping of the cleaning solution that you can use to clean an office. This ULV sprayer that we have is a really great system. So if you want to do this type of cleaning, we're going to show you a quick video about this. Now this video is on YouTube, and that's the link to it, but we're going to go ahead and play this video to show you how to do the sanitation using this sprayer unit for COVID.
Hi, Steve Blythe. We're going to talk about ULV, ultra low volume spraying. This is a 3-gallon container, runs off a 110, plug it in the wall, so great for our offices and areas where 110 is handy. It has a variable amount of spray for the micron, and the micron is the size of the droplet, and you want small droplets for this. A lot of systems start at 50. This one starts at a half a micron and rolls up to 50, and you control that by the flow switch here. Little bit of product and it'll break the droplets down into smaller pieces, and then you go all the way to full open, and it runs about 50 micron, which means it's going to coat faster. The larger droplets will coat faster. So it's pulling product out of the tank and then using the air to, here at the tip, blast out the particles in that instance. And it is a noisy little beast. So you fill it with your disinfectant, no flammable fluids in that instance, and then turn it on. When you're done, turn off the flow, and then hang this above the tank. It's got a little hook, so you can hang it on the plastic thing here to make sure that it flows back down into the tank. You don't want this to fall below the level of the fluid in the tank. So you have a couple of options when you're putting in your disinfectant for sanitizing. One, you can use a product that you dilute, and then you follow the dilution rate on the product, or you can use a ready to use and just pour it in. In our case, we're just going to make enough for testing. So we're going to put a half a gallon in and then add our concentrate to that per the manufacturer recommended amount, which in this case is 2 ounces a gallon. So we're going to put an ounce in after we put in the water. Recommend using distilled water, pure water, something like that that's been got the hard water and all the impurities taken out of it so that you don't clog up the impeller and those things with calcium, magnesium, the stuff in hard water. Comes this little funnel. In this instance is also filtering any large debris that you don't want to get picked up when it does it. When you're adding in your concentrate, you want to follow the dosage method that you can use the best. There are several ways to dose. This is a dosing bottle, and you squeeze product up into this part of the container to get the amount that you're looking for. This is a half-ounce section, so 2 of these is going to be an ounce for us. You can also get chicken baster type things that have gradients on them, which is easy for a lot of people to use. So here's our first half ounce. And then put the cap back on because it likes to spray out the top when you do this. And there's our second one. So now we've got an ounce added into this, which is what they say for our product. The unit wants this cap to be very tight because it is pressurized in an instance, so get it nice and tight. Okay. So now we're going to spray. In this instance, the system has a backpack strap on it if you'd like to put it on to hold it. Makes it a little easier to wander around the facility to hold the product. And then your sprayer has the valve from your micron size. A little bit open is more towards half a micron, and then all the way open is toward 50 micron, and that has to do with how big the droplets are going to be. They're going to coat the surface you're looking for. So in an interior environment, probably a little bit less. You're going to go a little slower. In an exterior environment, wide open, because you're going to be able to just flow it right out onto tabletops and chairs and all those kinds of things, would be a guide to that. So I'm going to turn it on. So here I'm going to use the backpack ULV sprayer to spray this front atrium area. And I have it off at the start.
Okay, you get the idea there, what those sprayers are like. You know, if you aren't doing this type of service, you probably, at least your company should consider doing this, because, you know, we're being asked to spread the word through the industry on that opportunity, where we have equipment to make it as easy as possible to get involved in it. From what I hear, there's some money to be made doing it. I don't think it's going to be a huge profit center, but it's more about providing the maximum value to your customers, especially on the areas where restaurants and things like that, the outdoor eating areas, and then even inside restaurants when they're reopening. And if there are birds related, make sure you offer this as well if you can. All right. We would like to do even more in on this subject, but we've run out of time. This is it. I mean, we hopefully have touched on the basics to help you. If there are any questions, let me know at this point before we sign off. If you want to chat in anything, do that. While you're typing in any last questions, I want to show you one other thing here coming up. In case you haven't done any other of the webcasts, one thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be shutting down the studio for a couple weeks here, doing some upgrades. But we're going to do Bird Week, July 20th through the 24th. And instead of having these sessions spread out over the whole month of July and a whole month of August again, we were asked, can we do multiple sessions? So we're going to allow you the opportunity this week of July 20th, 24th. There'll probably be 3 sessions over 2 days. Somewhere in that week. We don't have the dates exactly worked out, but you can become fully bird control certified during that week and take all 6 of the sessions. So stay tuned. Most of you signed up using our Eventbrite channel. If you go to our website, it'll redirect you to the Eventbrite, and you can sign up for each one of the sessions that we have planned there to help you guys learn. This is what it's all about. It's helping you increase your business, but this one, do it safely and be able to educate your customers properly about the dangers that relate to bird droppings, sanitation, how it factors into the whole COVID plan moving forward. When I'm going to ask one last favor of you guys, all the people on the session today, you're going to get an email. It'll have a quick survey, maybe a brief exam that's on there, but at least a survey. Let us know how this one was. This is the first time we did this one based on requests that we got. Should it have been longer? Should it be shorter? Should we include other things? Was it just right? Let us know. All of your feedback helps us define these sessions for you. Again, my name is Michael Gallion. I do business development. If you need to reach me, you can get me on my email. It's michael.gallion@birdbarrier.com. There it is for you. Any questions, direct them to me. There is probably the best way. I'm always in these sessions, and I'm not able to immediately respond to phone calls and things. So I see Keith says, I sent a few emails past class and didn't get a test for where okay, because some of the classes I think aren't going to require tests if they're outside of the 6. But as far as the test, Zach, do we have your email available? I don't think. Yeah, why don't we? So the one for you to email Zach directly. This is what we're trying to do is make the exams available. Keith, I'm not sure if you watch recorded sessions on our Bird Barrier live training page, but email Zach. He left out the @ sign there though. It's Zach Weiss at birdbarrier.com. Yeah, we've been up since 4 a.m. 4 a.m. our time. I don't know. Some of you guys may have been up since 2 a.m. We had a guy who was doing bird work till 2 a.m. last night who joined us for one of the sessions earlier. So Zach.Weiss there it is, at birdbarrier.com. So send him your request, and then we'll get you that. Yeah, I'm going to get some sleep tonight. I'm tired. I'm very tired. And this has been a lot of fun doing this stuff. But thank you to everyone out there. We will see you guys at the next webcast. Take care. Be safe.